Hello, so far we discussed mostly the React for developing our front-end applications, right, web applications, to accept the user interactions. If users are doing some different operations like putting some user queries or clicking the buttons or any other user action, then our React application can accept these interactions and push or pass these requests to the backend servers. So we discussed about discussing the backend server, right? So how can we develop these kind of minimal backend servers? So let's see one very simple example which can accept user requests on different endpoints and respond to these queries. So I will use Express framework. So first of all, let me import this Express. So I already installed this before, but if not, you should install it first. And then I can start using this framework to build my application. So let me define my application. So this application will just call the constructor of the framework. And then I'll start my application, right? When I click, I already see some auto-completion suggestions. So starting an application means actually listening to all the requests, right? Because whenever they see some request is coming, the server will respond to this request. So it will listen. It will listen to what? It will listen to a certain port. If we go to IP protocol basics, the user should know which port the server is listening and send the request to this relevant port. So I will start my application by listening to a port. So actually let's define a port here. For example, I can define any port here. And then I can pass a callback here if I want to do something just after the application starts. For example, let's create a callback here. What shall it do? For now, let's just put a console log to let the admin know that the application started on the specific port. All right, I think it's okay. So, okay, what should I do whenever I have a request? For example, let's say I have an endpoint which just checks the health of the server. For example, let's say hello. If I have a request on hello, then let's suppose I want to respond with a hi. Okay, so let's develop this function. Say hi. So normally, of course, this function should have the request and the response, right? Because again, if we go back to the IP protocol basics, there should be a request and there should be a relevant response. So in this case, I don't want to do anything with the request. Like I could try to parse something or do something else, but for now, I will just get the request and do nothing on the request, but I'll just send a reply on the response. Whenever I have a request on hello, I will say hi. Cool. So this is my function. But I should somehow link this function to my application, right? Because application is running and this function is here, but application should use this function. So it is just use function, use. And first I have to pass the endpoint, which was hello, as I write here. It is hello. And application use for this endpoint, say hi function. I guess it's okay. Let's see. So I will start my server. I already see the log here. It started. So let me open a browser. Okay, I had a browser open before previously. So let me refresh this. Okay, so I get a message here, right? It is, I did not define this endpoint, which is just the root main page. But if I go to the endpoint that I defined, which was hello, then I see the hi message. Cool. So this is the first step, which is responding on an endpoint. Cool. What if I want to include a function which operates on all requests, not only this endpoint, but on all requests? For example, logging, right? Whenever I have a request, I just want to record all the user actions, whatever the request is. It can be hello endpoint, it can be another endpoint, it can be anything. I just want to record all the user interactions. So let's create another function for that. I said it can be a logging function, right? Again, let's do that. No, this is not response. In this case, I will just, for example, maybe write to a file or something else, but for now, let's just put to the console. That's all. And okay, let app use this function. So in this case, I'm not passing any endpoint like this, right? So no endpoint argument passed to this use function. So I just use the callback for the use function arguments. Let's see what's happening now. I just restarted my server and I'm refreshing this request. I again see the hi message, but I don't see any console log, right? So let's try to go some other endpoints, something like this. I see the log here. Any request came. Very good. But the browser still waiting for some response, right? Because I didn't get, as a user on the browser side, I did not get any response. I'm still waiting. Maybe after default timeout on the browser settings, maybe it will fall into the timeout situation. But now it's struggling and waiting for a response. What is missing here? Because I did a console log here, but I did not return any response. So let's try to do that. I can try to add a response here, response sent, but it is not this function should do, right? Because this is just log. So responding should be handled by some other functions. So if I call next, So this is something new that we just saw. Calling next. If we call next function, it means it is going to the next function matching with this request. So I did not pass any argument to next function. Next matching function to this call. All right, let's see. What happened now? I forgot to add this next in the function definition. Restart, refresh. Okay, I saw the log and then I get the response. This response is just from the default functions on the framework because I did not define this endpoint, right? But I have some endpoint which was defined, so let's go to that one. So now I see hi, but I do not see the log. Why? Because this hi already is already responded to the request and it's done, right? Whenever the response is set, browser is not waiting for anything else and the operation is concluded. But I want first log the request and then call the next. So in this case, since say hi is registered before log, this log is not executed at all after this operation is concluded here. So let's change the order of registering these functions. If I register first log and then say hi, so what I expect theoretically is first log should execute because it is used by the app for all requests for all endpoints. And then after this is done, the next call matching to the relevant endpoint is called, which would be in this case say hi, because say hi would match this request, right? So let's see. Now let's start from another endpoint, this one. Okay, a new request came, first log and then the message and then hello, first log, I see the second one here and then message. So everything looks good. Maybe one more reminder here. App is using hello to using say hi to respond to hello endpoints, right? But on this endpoint, I can have lots of different request types. Like maybe I could get a get request or put, post, delete, or any other request type. So use is responding to all these kind of requests. But for example, if I use any specific type of request, it will only respond to the get request, not to post, or delete, or the other types of requests. So get should still work for the browser call because it's a get. Let's see. Okay, hi is still there. Cool. All right, what else we can do? Let's see. Okay, let's see some parsing some parameters and queries from the request. So let me create a function here, which could be something like, say, name. Maybe I would pass my name as a parameter, request parameter. So it would be request response and the application will use this which endpoint, say name endpoint, with a parameter, right? If I use this syntax, it means this name would be a parameter, which would be a variable. And for this endpoint, which function I'll use? I'll use this say name function, right? Okay, so everything looks good. So now I have to parse my variable. So let's define our variable. So this variable should be parsed from the request. So far we did not do anything on the request. We only handled response. But now it's time to use request because this variable should be parsed from the upcoming request. So it should be parsed from the query parameters, request parameters. And after having that, the response would be including this variable. All right, let's restart our server and let's go to the relevant endpoint, which was say name, but I have to pass the request parameter too, right, which is my name. Okay, I see my name here. If it is another name, then the response would be another name. This is the request parameter. There should be some request queries too. For example, let's define age. Which would be read from the requests queries. In this case, I will add not only the request parameter, but also a request query. So let's see how we can add some queries. Queries start with a question mark, and then I can add my queries like age is, let's say I'm very young, 21. Okay, I see my request query here too. So these are all about parsing different request queries and the parameters. Very cool. Finally, let's do error handling. For example, if we say that if age is smaller than 20, I don't know why, but let's just say it's not good for these users to use this website. So let's put a warning. So in this case, I want to respond with an error message. So the way to do that is, first we saw here, calling next with no argument was just calling the next function, right? But calling the next with an argument, for example, error message, calls the error handling function. And how should the error function be? It should be like this. There is the error function, error callback request, response, and next all the parameters here. And whenever it's called with an error message, then I'll just respond with this error message. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure if it's correct, but let's see. Okay, 21 works. How about 17? Yes, alright, this is what I'm expecting, but next is not defined. Ah, this next is not defined. Okay, so it should be from the responding function. Okay, and alright, cool. So now I see error and error messages, error message. So let's put something more reasonable here. Cool. And this is the error handling function, right? So we can add another function to handle undefined endpoints. So for that, this time I need not the error function because it would not be called with an error function, but should be coming from an endpoint which was not defined. So response and next. In this case, I can just call this one, right? So which is the next actually. Next. What's my error function? Not found. Okay. Let's go to some endpoints that I don't know. Okay, not found is here. Very cool.